So let me just start off. So I'm Eytan Seidman. As mentioned, I worked at Microsoft prior to this. Can I just get out of the way for a second? I worked at Microsoft for 6 years prior to starting Oyster.com. I worked on 2 products. I worked on Microsoft CRM, which is kind of an enterprise thing, and then I worked on Live Search, which then became Bing. I was the first product manager on Live Search. Worked there for about 4 or 5 years, and then kind of towards the end, I led relevance for Live Search. Basically, everything about organic results and how we ranked organic results is what I worked on. So I spent a lot of time on conferences. Some folks might know me from there. In April of 2008, I started Oyster.com. And Oyster.com is basically a very deep hotel site. So what we do is we go to hotels, we take really deep photos of the hotels, we do reviews of the hotels, and we give people a really deep experience about what it's like to be there. So just as a disclaimer, I have never worked as an SEO professional. I've never worked as a marketing professional. All my experience is basically as a search engineer and now kind of as a content owner, a content publisher, and trying to build a site to attract millions of users. So let me kind of start off with the basis of my talk, which is that, my core belief, and one of the things I learned at Search, and one of the things I believed in Oyster, is that pure play SEO doesn't really work. Kind of the notion that you're going to go in and build millions of pages with kind of really thin content and hope to rank, kind of as Will mentioned, is not really going to work. That basically the engines are spending millions and millions of dollars trying to surface high quality content. If you're, what we did all day on Bing was focus on how do we give people the best results. And if search engines don't do that, then ultimately they're not going to work. And so kind of the notion that you're going to be able to kind of figure out the algorithm or play with it, or be able to figure that out and actually kind of beat them over time, I think, is not going to work. And so when we started Oyster, that was very much our vantage point. So let me kind of just tell you kind of some brief background about Oyster. It was funded by, it's a venture-backed startup funded by Bain Capital and Scripps Networks, which owns Food Network, HGTV, things of that nature. We launched the product 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, in late June of 2009, we launched the product. We have about 25 employees, and we have a big remote team of folks that goes to hotels and basically goes undercover or goes and visits and creates content for it. And so kind of really what we're powered by is really hundreds of photos and really deep content. How many folks have used the site or heard of it, just out of curiosity, by show of hands? All right, so a decent number have experienced it. We have about 500,000 visitors worldwide. 35% of those are international. So it just kind of gives you a lay of the land about what we're about and who uses the product. So here's kind of the rough story. So in August of 2007, my co-founder and I, who's also my brother, went to Alaska. And we had this experience where we basically booked 2 hotels. One of the hotels was a really awesome place, a really awesome lodge. And we had a great time there. And actually, Alaska is like that is Alaska, and it's super beautiful. If you have a chance to go, I highly recommend it. And then the second place we went to was this hotel that we'd found online. And we got there and we're like, holy crap, like this is not what we expected at all. How many people have had this experience, like by show of hands, where you show up? All right, so a lot of people have. And we're like, how the heck did this happen? How did we end up at a place that was nothing like we thought it would be? Like, this is the year 2007. You kind of assume like all the content you're seeing is going to be roughly accurate. We did a lot of research on it. We didn't go in naively. And so we had that experience, and we were definitely really wowed of like how come we were able to have an experience of that nature. And so we started doing some digging, and we looked at results in different geographies beyond Alaska, all sorts of, in Jamaica and Cabo, Costa Rica, and then destinations like Miami. And this page that you see here actually is from 2008. It was a screenshot that we actually showed to our investors. And I think this page ranked like number 1 or number 2 or number 3 if you queried for Los Cabos. And you can see it was kind of like a throwback to like, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s of websites. Kind of decent content, but really not that, it's really not that sort of deep stuff. The other content that was there, the 2 other major sources of content I'll talk about right now that existed at that time were Tripadvisor, which still exists. I don't know if people can see this, but basically the thing with Tripadvisor is anybody can go there, anybody can write a review, and you kind of end up like doing this thing of like, am I like this user, right? Because the Bellagio has like some amazing reviews, it has some crappy reviews, and so you kind of start trying to figure out like, am I going to like it or not? And you have to kind of do this teasing apart to figure out who you're like and who you're not like and whether or not you're going to trust it. So that's kind of the first major source of content that exists out there. The second one is the hotel. And the hotel websites are just kind of notorious for these really cheesy websites. Sorry for anybody who works at hotels. And the pictures are always like super beautiful, super glammed up. There's never any people in them, or rarely any people in them. And they're definitely trying to market the site and kind of market their hotel and give you a sense of what it's like to be there, but really it's just uber marketed. And so they're kind of the other source of it. And what we recognize is there's nobody that was doing anything to kind of be the expert brand of like, hey, we've been there, we've had the experience, we know what it's like. And so we had always sort of felt that there was an opportunity there. And this brand exists in a lot of places. So CNET's a good example of it. Cars.com, I don't know if people use that site, is a good example of it. And we felt that was kind of the open space in the market to be able to go to hotels, take hundreds of photos, and give people a real-world experience of it. And so that's exactly what we did. And here's just another example, again, of Google search in 2008, really dominated by mom-and-pop sites, Tripadvisor, and transaction sites. There was no kind of deep authority in the results. And so what you kind of net out with is there's massive industry. So the first dirty little secret about hotels, or actually about travel, is that hotels is where all the money's at for a whole variety of reasons. But basically, sites like Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity collectively do about $30 billion a year in gross bookings on hotels, and they have a market cap combined about $50 billion. So you have this massive, massive industry which doesn't really have any differentiated content. If you go and look at the content on hotels.com, or you look at it on Expedia, or you look at Travelocity, it's the exact same stuff. And I'm sure people have always experienced this. Like, it's the exact same content every single place. So you have this massive industry that's not really doing anything innovative or that interesting. And so there's obviously a big opportunity there. And so kind of what I meant by like SEO strategy was not like a pure play SEO strategy would not work, is that what we believed is that what we need to start out with is a highly differentiated product. That if we had a highly differentiated product and a really amazing story around that, that over time we would figure out ways to kind of get links and to have people link to us. But if we didn't have a highly differentiated product, then we'd kind of be going into the marketplace with this undifferentiated thing, trying to compete against a whole bunch of folks who also don't have that interesting products. And doing that's a big uphill battle. And I'm going to prove to you, actually I'm going to show you, because there are a lot of companies that started at the same time we did, that strategy, if you go into it without a really differentiated product and a really great experience, you're going to have a hard time. So our whole thinking was, let's build something that's massively differentiated, that's really interesting, and then over time, we'll use that to parlay that into our SEO strategy. Here are some travel companies that started at the same time as Oyster. There's actually many, many more than this. I wish I had listed them all. I'm sure folks recognize some of the companies on here. There are some that have done awesome work. Tripit's a great example that was mentioned earlier. They're doing some kick-ass stuff. There's actually probably about 40 companies, all told, probably $500 million invested in them. So there's a lot of folks out there who are competing, who in addition to all the incumbents, are competing kind of for the same space that we were competing in. And our thinking is that these folks are reading the same, are reading all the same things that we're reading about SEO. And so really what we have to do is make sure we differentiate on product, because ultimately the best product is going to win out there, and was our belief. So what we did, as I mentioned, is our goal was to create the canonical hotel page. We wanted to have the best hotel page on the internet, the page that if somebody's kind of thinking about a hotel, that they're going to link to. The sort of page that if you knew about our site, you'd be like crazy not to check it out. And so, our site is basically is chock full of photos, really great reviews, and great content. And so actually, if you, I'll just fast forward one slide. So what we do is, like I mentioned, we go to the hotel, we go undercover, we'll go there on a visit, we go in with really high quality cameras, we'll take hundreds and hundreds of photos, and we'll give you an in-depth experience of what it's like to be there. And there's nobody else that does that. There's actually nobody else in the market that actually is going taking high quality photos, covering it soup to nuts, and giving people the experience of exactly what it's like to be at the hotel. And that's our major differentiator and our major the core kind of our product strategy. In addition to that, we bring expertise. We're telling you about every aspect of the hotel, and we're also giving you curated lists. So something that we noticed is people are searching for what are the best kid-friendly hotels in Miami? What are the best party hotels in Miami? What are the best party hotels in Vegas? And so what we do is we create these lists using all of our content to tell you, hey, if you're going to Vegas, the Bellagio, the Hard Rock, MGM Grand are the best party hotels. In every geography, we have those curated lists. And again, just here's another screenshot of the product showing you the expertise aspect of it. So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's kind of naive. Like, I'm going to build a really great product and everybody's going to show up at my door. Like, so that's actually not going to happen. If you're hoping that that's the case, it will not work. And so there's kind of a few possibilities that you can pursue in order to get traffic. And we definitely consider all of them. We've dabbled in all of them. The first is you spend a bunch of money on brand marketing. And I'll talk about why that's not a really great idea. The second is you spend a bunch of money on search engine marketing. And you really kind of hang your hat on that, and you differentiate yourself in search engine marketing. The last is you get links to drive SEO, which will ultimately cause you to rank higher in SEO. And there's a lot of others as well. We'll talk about the social angle and getting links on the social side as well. So the first strategy of outspending your competitors on marketing is not going to work. And even if you think like Oyster's got like, hey, we raised $10, $15 million, that pales in comparison to the budgets of the major folks. So on the left, I think you have Expedia, who's spending $1.3 billion a year on sales and marketing. Priceline is spending $600 million a year. Travelocity is like at $300 million. Orbit's at another $300 million, right? And then you have Oyster down there. I think we spend about $500K a year on the personnel related to our marketing efforts. And so the core of it is that it's going to be really hard to try and outspend these folks in brand marketing. And nobody's going to write you a check for $1 billion to go and try and do it, even if they love your product. So that strategy, generally will just not work. The second strategy is an SEM business. Oyster utilizes SEM. We have SEM for our brand. We've done it in pockets and in other places. One of the key things with SEM, though, is that over time, it can kind of take over in a way which can be negative. And at the extreme, it just becomes kind of arbitrage because, as people have talked about, SEM users are highly transactional in nature. They're coming in. It's really hard to make a brand impression. And so you can kind of get into this game where like you're buying a click for $1 and you're trying to like spit out the other end for $1.05. And all of a sudden, if the click prices go up or your quality scores go down, then you're not going to have a business anymore. So trying to build your entire business on SEM obviously has risks associated with it. And then kind of the last part is like getting links. So it turns out in travel, one of the challenges with travel, and I think there are other similar sectors such as finance and real estate, is that there's a whole slew of challenges of getting links from people who actually do travel. And I'll name some of them. First of all, the demographic is a little bit older. They're not quite as bloggy in nature, right? So the person that just went to Maui and dropped 10 grand on their vacation and is 55 or whatever, or X age and has grandkids, is probably not going to go fire up a blog. It's just not really that demographic at the core. The other issue is most people don't travel a lot. There are kind of some business road warriors, but most people travel 2 or 3 times a year. They have a couple vacations. They're not going on vacation every day, so there's not an opportunity for them to kind of blog about you every day, even if they did hear about you and want to blog about you. And the other thing is it's not quite as passionate as other audiences, right? The SEO audience is a very, very passionate audience. Politics is a very passionate audience. There's a lot of chat and a lot of discussion going on. That's less so in travel. There is some of it, but not a ton. Like as a show of hands, how many people follow travel blogs? I mean, it's not a good question in this audience. All right, so there's a few, but actually not like there's actually not a ton of people. Brand, obviously. Yeah.
Are you going to tell them which travel blog they should follow?
Yes, everybody should follow @Everywhereist.
Thank you.
So what we did is we kind of said, hey, we started looking at our content, and we literally one day we started looking at our photos, and we're like, wow, like we have like the identical shots that the hotel has on their website. So here on the left you have a picture of a couple getting married in the Dominican Republic, and it looks beautiful. And we have like the exact same photo from a slightly different angle, right? And what you'll see there, I don't know if people can see it, is there's like a whole bunch of guests at their wedding. And it's just kind of a funny thing of like, hey, here's the hotel photo, it's all serene, it's all beautiful. And then there's the reality, which is like, there's like guests in their like swim trunks watching your wedding that were probably not invited to it. And we've seen this all over. Here's another one. So here's actually like a one we saw. So this is a guy who's got a surfboard at a hotel in Miami. Which was kind of odd, because like, I guess it's at a hotel, but like maybe it's by the beach or something. And then we show up there, took a very similar picture, and it's actually that pool. And it's like a tiny little pool, like there's no, like, you're not gonna go surfing in there, it's very unlikely. And we posted on our site at oyster.com/hotel/photo fakeouts, and you can see them. We have dozens and dozens of examples of literally the exact same angle, our shot, and the hotel shot. And it can create really funny things, but more importantly, it reinforces our brand that we've been there, we've taken our own photos, and we've had our own experiences. And that's worked really, really well for us because it kind of hits that nerve of like, hey, I want to know what it's really like to be there. Here's another one we've had as well. I don't know if people can see it. We do this thing called bundle breakdowns. So we'll take like a package the hotel is offering, and we'll break it down and show users how much it's actually worth, and is it actually a good deal. So for example, hotels will do these promotions where they'll sell you something with like a spa package or whatever. And it turns out that very often you're actually paying more. But most people don't do the math on it, and they go and book a spa package. So a site like Lifehacker picked it up. It's a great consumer story. Helps people understand the value proposition that we offer. And when you have good content, it turns out your competition will link to you as well. So what you're seeing there is basically the Tripadvisor forums. All the destination experts, and if you do this, if you actually check Google, you'll be able to see this, link to Oyster as the canonical source. So somebody asks a question in the Tripadvisor forums of like, hey, I'm really curious what the MGM Grand suite looks like. And the people who are destination experts who post thousands of times on Tripadvisor now reference Oyster as a canonical source. So if you do a site on Tripadvisor.com, check out Oyster, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of links of all these destination experts who are linking to us as the canonical source because we have the content asset, which actually doesn't even exist in many ways on Tripadvisor itself. And so these stories and kind of the core value proposition has gotten picked up by hundreds and hundreds of folks. 2020, Nightline, MSNBC, and almost all of it, I'd say, is organic. It's actually just people who are picking up the story, who are finding it and saying, wow, it's a really great utility to be able to use, and talking about it. 37 Signal is another one. Like literally at this point, I mean, everybody has kind of picked up the story. And then there's also television as well. So 2020, as I mentioned, CNN, Nightline, and Chicago 5. The Today Show contacted us and said, hey, we'd love to do it. We'd love to do kind of a story in your photo fakeouts. Our folks flew down to Costa Rica with them, went to a whole bunch of hotels, showed them how we did it. And again, that story came about totally organically just by virtue of what we had been doing. It's pretty neat. And so here are the results of kind of how we've done over the past 24 months. So we launched, like I said, 2 years ago, basically to the day, in like late June of 2009. And so one key thing, we launched, it turns out we bought Oyster.com. We were really happy with our brand new shiny domain. And it turns out it was a porn site. And so we launched and we're like, I guess that label was still on there. And so the first day, the first month, we had like no traffic, and then eventually folks kind of helped us out, and we got it removed. So kind of a keynote when you buy a domain is to figure out what labels it had on it before you start going using it. So we started out, we had no traffic. I mean, we were a brand new site. We had produced this product that we thought was interesting, but we had very little traffic. We had no organic traffic. And as you can see, like a couple key things to point out of it, we only cover right now about 1,200 hotels and 25 destinations. So we have a lot of room to kind of keep growing our hotel base. So we don't cover, for example, Paris or London. Those are all destinations we're going to go and add. And so you can see a couple key things to note about this is like it has not always been a straight line. There were times where we kind of started wondering is this going to work? Are people going to pick it up? And then you can see kind of obviously in 2011 all the Panda things have obviously treated us very well. As there's kind of been a return to quality. And here is, I don't know if folks can see this, but here is kind of an article that was written about other competitive sites who got hit by Panda. So the title reads, Big Travel Sites Hit by Google Content Farming Update Clear Out. This was February of 2011, so about 6 months ago. And a whole bunch of folks in there, so Uptake and Travel Post and Destination 360, and all the traffic that was lost from those sites. And so what I mean by this is an example, I think, of kind of just pure play SEO tactics, where somebody's kind of trying to, for lack of a better term, game the algorithm, trying to figure out how do I create millions of pages and rank for everything under the sun. And kind of as Will said, eventually it will catch up to you. Eventually, if you don't have a compelling value proposition, we believe that is going to catch up to us. And so kind of our base has always been, we'd much rather be like in this boat where it's going to be slow and steady, it's going to take time, but eventually the strategy will work because the high quality content is going to get rewarded. And here's like another view of it as well. This is from TouchGraph, and it creates a really cool thing. So if you look at kind of hotel photos and hotel reviews, both on Bing and Google, you can see that Oyster kind of, for those keywords, Oyster is ranked very high for all derivative keywords. So you can see kind of the company that we're in is Tripadvisor.com is up there, I think Marriott, Expedia, et cetera. So just in the past 2 years, we've gone from 0 to being with some of the biggest brands in the industry. And like I said, obviously, we still have a lot of room for headroom for growth because we only have 1,200 hotels. We are going to grow that from 1,200 to 20,000 or 25,000, much larger. Another key thing that we look at a lot is engagement. So what this is showing is basically the number of pages per visitor for 3 types of users. So the first is just any type of visitor. The second is anybody who comes to our door. The second is people who shop on our site. So we define shoppers as people who enter dates because that means they're kind of like in a travel planning mode. And then the last one is bookers, so people actually book with us. And what you can see, so our visitors do about 23 pages a visit in a session. Our shoppers, people who are getting engaged, are 75, and the bookers 122. And so people are just engaging really, really deeply. And so we always think very hard, and we always look at these metrics of like, are we actually, when people come to us, are they having a great experience? Because ultimately, that's going to drive the business. And if people have a great time, they'll go and tell their friends, hey, this resource is awesome. Go check it out. Go use it when you plan travel. Here's the same data, but just time on site. So people who shop with us spend about a half hour on the site, actually over a half hour on the site, 33 minutes total. And so one of the key things I'd say about all the traffic that we've had to date, if you flash back to that slide here, so many hundreds of thousands of visits per month, is that basically all of it, let me pop back here, is long tail traffic. So all those visits came across 150,000 unique keywords. So the vast majority of our keywords today are still driving very, very few visits per month. And one of the reasons is because the big kind of kahunas, for lack of a better term, in travel search is something like New York hotels. New York hotels has like 20 million queries a month. It's not going to be possible for us to rank that high for that query after 1 year. But a lot of the tail stuff is what's driving it. So examples here are like Mandarin Oriental Las Vegas Cityscape Suite. We've got that content. A user comes in, they're going to be really pleased. Sofitel Los Angeles room service menu. We have that. Treasure Island Petite Suite review. Again, all stuff that we have really great content for. Users land there and have a great experience. So here are my if I had to kind of encapsulate it, I have 6 lessons, I guess like the Oyster half dozen or something like that we learned over time. And the first one I'd say is you have to nail the basics. You have to do the core stuff really well. But I think that should probably be about 15 to 25% of your job. So things like H1s, H2s, interlinking, all the basic stuff that you read about, you kind of have to nail it. It's a critical ante, and we do it well on Oyster. We're always looking for things we can do better there, but you have to nail this stuff. The second thing, and I think Will actually articulated it really well, is that if you don't mind waking up one day and losing half your business, then you should definitely go and buy links. It's probably going to be a faster strategy. If you're trying to build a business, though, for the long term, if you're engaging in all these kind of black hat tactics, ultimately you're kind of playing with fire, and like one day the whole thing's going to blow up, or you're risking to blow it up. So if you don't care, if you care a lot about your business, the advice that I would learn is that you don't want to kind of do these sort of things. We've never bought links. We've never engaged in any of that. We get emails all the time like, hey, I'll buy a link from you guys. I'll pay you guys $1,000, $10,000, whatever the number is. We've never done it. Another key thing that we've learned is having a sustainable link building strategy. What I mean by sustainable is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So something we're doing a lot of now, for example, is we syndicate our content to Huffington Post, to USA Today, to Business Insider, and actually have weekly columns to them. So it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work to get set up. It takes a lot of work to get there, but it's the kind of gift that keeps on giving. So every week, we're getting links from USA Today, or we're getting links from Huffington Post, we're getting links from Business Insider. Those sort of things are sustainable strategies, because you don't have to go and reinvent them every week or every month. The other thing is doing things that are on brand. If you're kind of doing gimmicky things to get a link, ultimately it's not going to drive a lot of usage. It's probably going to be pretty low value, and generally I think just doesn't work very well. You'd much rather spend a time doing something that's on topic, that's going to be high quality. Another key thing, I think it's really, really critical, is focusing on the long term. In general, we don't look at gyrations month over month. Things are going to go up, things will go down. Month over month doesn't really matter that much. I mean, Google's not necessarily changing stuff like month over month. So trying to look at it in that, through that lens is not necessarily the right thing to do. So we very much believe in looking at things on a 6-month basis, on a 12-month basis. How are we doing quarter over quarter, and not necessarily month over month? So the formula that we've used is definitely not kind of like a get-rich-quick formula. It's not, if you're looking for that, it's not going to work like that. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of effort to kind of just grind it out and keep on focusing on sustainable strategies that will work over a long period of time. Another one is being tenacious about getting links. So one of the things that has happened to us is like, right now a lot of people are writing about us. And so what we'll do is, as we see in our GA, we'll go back to them and say, hey, we really appreciate you guys mentioning us, but it would be great if you could link to us. And so we follow up with everybody, working to make sure that we're getting all the links that we should be getting. And I can't emphasize enough, because there's a lot of opportunities out there that people who are using our content or mentioning us, but are not linking to us in the exact right way. We'll go and always follow up. We'll always be hardcore about that. And the last one I'd say is it's really important to look at, for inspiration, similar industries. Give a huge shout out. I don't know if people follow Zillow. I think their blog does an amazing job. Real estate's kind of like this inherently boring thing. It's just not super interesting in a lot of ways, but they've managed to do an amazing job with it, where their blog has great celeb stuff, really interesting stuff. I always find myself going back to it. And I think it's important to look at similar examples in industries. Like real estate for us is one, finance, travel, because those are all things that happen infrequently. And so it's worth looking at industries where people are doing interesting stuff that have a lot of similarities to yourself. It helps us a lot figure out our strategies as well. So what I'll kind of just leave you with is that the core for us has been basically having a really differentiated product strategy, a really differentiated content base, which ultimately has driven our SEO strategy, and not the other way around. And all the stuff that you saw, all the mentions you saw, are basically 90% of them are organic. It's just people reaching out to us, linking to us organically because of the content, because of the product we produced, and not having to spend hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't have to go and market the product. And I think if you do that and you pour all of your energy into that, ultimately you'll find a lot of success building out your SEO strategy. You'll find opportunities there. That's about it. Thanks so much.